승객 여러분, 목적지에 도착했습니다. 전원을 연결하여 옷차림을 정돈하시고 각종 전자기기를 필요에 따라 자유롭게 사용하시기 바랍니다. 아이오닉5와 함께 해주셔서 감사합니다. Welcome on board, Ionic 5.
다시 여행을 하게 된다면 가장 먼저 그곳의 냄새를 맡을 것. 아침에 눈을 떴을 때 그 낯선 천장을 기억해 둘 것. 반드시 그곳에 물건 하나는 두고 올 것. 여행에서 소중한 기억으로 남는 것은 가장 사소한 순간들이다. The Outstanding K8
Kia, movement that inspires.
서울 첨단 교통 시스템은 남단 1에서 3호 터널의 교통 관리를 1998년 남산권을 시작으로 하여 2000년부터는 내부 순환로, 올림픽대로, 강변북로 등으로 모든 도시 고속도로 구간의 교통 관리 시스템을 확대 구축하게 됩니다. 2004년 서울 대중교통 체계 개편을 계기로 첨단 대중교통, 교통카드 시스템 등 첨단 교통 시스템을 기획, 구축, 운영하는 총괄 기관인 서울 토피스가 탄생하게 됩니다. 2005년 무인 단속 시스템 도입으로 인력에 의존하던 단속 체계를 자동화하였으며 2008년부터 대중교통 서비스의 고급화를 위해 버스 도착 정보 안내 시스템을 도입, 확대하고 있으며 교통관리 구간을 간선도로로 확대하여 도시고속도로와 통합 교통관리 체계를 구축하고 시간, 장소에 구애 없는 스마트 교통정보 서비스를 실현하고 있습니다. 2013년 교통, 재난, 충무의 기능을 통합한 서울 통합센터는 천만 시민의 움직임에 든든한 동반자가 되고 있습니다. 도로교통 정보 시스템은 수집한 교통 정보를 토피스에서 가공한 뒤 운전자에게 제공하고 교통 상황을 관리하며 분석을 통해 미리 예측 대응하고 있습니다. 우선 다양한 기술로 속도, 교통량, 돌발 상황, 기상, 연계 정보를 수집합니다. GPS를 통한 택시 위치 정보를 무선 통신을 이용하여 실시간으로 수집하여 도로의 통행 속도를 산출합니다. 도시 고속도로에는 루프 검지기와 영상 검지기 등 최첨단 차량 검지 시스템이 250m에서 500m 간격으로 설치되어 있으며 이러한 현장 시스템으로부터 속도, 교통량 정보 등을 수집합니다. 이렇게 다양한 방식과 시스템으로부터 수집된 도로교통 정보는 교통관리센터의 토피스 시스템에서 실시간으로 가공됩니다. 토피스에서 가공된 정보는 홈페이지, 도로 전광판, 교통방송, 스마트폰, ARS, 내비게이션, SNS를 통해 실시간으로 시민들에게 제공됩니다. 또한 교통 분야 빅데이터 분석을 통해 교통 예보 서비스가 이용자에게 제공됩니다. 날씨 예보와 같이 미래의 도로 소통 상황을 예측하여 안내해주고 있습니다. 도로상의 돌발 상황이 발생하면 토피스는 영상 및 시스템을 통한 자동 돌발 감지를 통해 실시간으로 돌발을 감지하여 도로 전광 표지판에 도로교통 정보를 표출하여 교통률을 제어합니다. 차로 제어 시스템으로 차로를 통제하고 우회 도로를 안내하여 교통 흐름을 제어합니다. 필요시 연결로 제어 시스템을 작동시켜 교통 정체가 가중되는 것을 막습니다. 정체가 극심한 도로에서는 녹색 신호를 길게 주어 교통이 원활하도록 돕습니다. 서울은 잘 갖추어진 대중교통시설을 바탕으로 버스의 과학적인 운행 관리를 위한 버스 운행 관리 시스템, 실시간 버스 도착 예정 정보를 정확하고 편리하게 제공하는 버스 정보 시스템, 모든 대중교통을 이용할 수 있는 교통카드 시스템 등 서울의 발전된 첨단 IT 기술을 바탕으로 스마트 대중교통 도시를 만들고 있습니다. 버스 관리 시스템은 차고지 출발부터 버스 내에 장착된 요금 수집 및 운행 관리 기능이 통합된 차량 단말기, GPS 수신기, 무선 통신망을 통해 실시간 위치 정보를 수집하고 있으며 버스의 위치, 속도, 운행 상태 등 버스 관리를 위한 모든 실시간 운행 정보를 수집, 가공, 관리하는 시스템입니다. 이러한 첨단 버스 관리 시스템을 통해 불규칙하던 배차 간격이 관리되면서 정시 운행과 승객 몰림이 완화되었고 버스를 타도 약속 시간을 지킬 수 있게 되었습니다. 뿐만 아니라 도로상에서 갑작스럽게 돌발 상황이 발생했을 때 즉각적인 노선 우회 등 신속한 대응이 가능해져 승객이 버스를 무작정 기다리지 않아도 되게 되었습니다. 버스 승객들은 버스 정류소에 설치된 버스 정보 안내 단말기를 통해 정확한 버스 도착 예정 시간, 교통 약자를 위한 저상 버스, 운행 막차, 사고로 인한 정체, 인근 지하철역의 지하철 도착 예정 시간 등 다양한 정보를 알 수 있습니다. 버스 승하차 교통카드 데이터를 이용하여 제차 인원을 산정한 후 혼잡 여부를 판단하여 안내하고 있습니다. 버스 차내 혼잡도 안내 서비스를 통해 혼잡한 차량의 이용객 분산 및 쾌적한 차내 환경을 유도할 수 있습니다. 선불카드, 교통카드, 그리고 모바일과 스마트워치로도 결제가 가능한 전자지불 시스템은 모든 교통수단과 공공시설에서 이용이 가능합니다. 교통카드 이용률은 지하철 100%, 버스 98.7%로 대중교통을 이용하는 거의 모든 시민이 이용하고 있으며 택시의 경우에도 매년 꾸준히 증가하여 67.9%에 달하는 높은 이용률을 보이고 있습니다. 통합 전자지불 시스템으로 수도권 내에서 거리 비례제의 합리적 요금 체계가 정립되었습니다. 10km까지는 기본 요금 내에서 30분 이내에 어떠한 대중교통 수단을 이용하든 무료 환승이 가능합니다. 서울시는 소통 상황 관리를 위해 첨단 무인 단속 시스템을 구축하였습니다. 무인 단속 카메라는 전후 좌우 도로의 전방향을 단속하며 도심 주요 도로의 주정차 위반 차량과 자전거 전용 도로 위반 차량도 단속하는 등 다기능 수행이 가능합니다. 버스 전용 차로 또한 무인 단속 카메라를 통해 위반 차량을 단속하고 있으며 버스 전용 차로로 끼어들어 주행하는 차량을 단속 카메라가 포착합니다. 단속이 의심되면 시민들은 실시간 확인이 가능합니다. 교통 위반 관리 시스템으로 보내진 차량 번호와 사진으로 자동차 소유주의 정보 조회가 이루어지고 과태료가 부과되면 차량 소유자의 주소지 우체국과 자동으로 연계되어 고지서가 인수에 발송됩니다. 서울의 무인 단속 시스템은 단속부터 수납 처리까지 모든 과정이 자동화로 이루어지고 있습니다. 서울은 이제 세계 지능형 교통 중심에서 스마트 모빌리티 세상을 열고자 합니다. 모든 교통 정보가 무선 통신으로 연결되는 VTX 커넥티드카 기반을 조성할 예정이며 위험 상황 및 교통 신호 등을 제공하는 도로 협력 인프라를 구축해 나갈 예정입니다. VTV 기반 조성을 통해 교통사고를 40% 이상 줄여나가고 특히 교통사고 위험이 높은 BRT 운영 도로 구간에서는 세계에서 가장 안전한 시스템을 선보일 예정입니다. 또한 자율주행 실증 단지를 조성하여 미래 교통 환경을 새롭게 만들어갈 것입니다. 이제 서울은 대중교통 천국을 넘어 승용차가 필요 없는 스마트 모빌리티를 구현하고자 합니다. 이를 위해 모든 가용한 교통수단이 융합되고 공유되어 도어투도어 서비스가 실현됩니다. 스마트 모빌리티 구현을 위해 모든 교통수단 정보를 통합하여 모바일 기반에서 목적지만 입력하면 예약, 결제가 동시에 이루어지는 모빌리티 서비스를 구축할 예정입니다. 또한 클라우드 기반 공유 플랫폼을 구축, 일 10억 건의 데이터가 모이고 분석되는 빅데이터 교통 생태계를 만들어갈 예정입니다. 서울은 미래 교통의 꿈이 현실에서 이루어지는 세계 최고의 스마트 모빌리티 허브 도시로 자리 잡을 것입니다.
바로 렌탈. 2021
Good afternoon, everyone. This is 2021 Seoul Smart Mobility Expo, and it is Thematic Session 7, which is about MaaS.
안녕하세요.
Hello, I am your moderator of this session. I am Jeungsan-no, professor at Hongik University. Great to see you all.
본 세션은
This session,
잘 아시겠지만 이용자
as you are well aware, is about on-demand mobility services. As that service has appeared these days, people turn their eyes from buying automobile to buying mobility services. Globally, not only the mobility service providers, but also communications provider OEMs are trying to be MaaS platform, so we need to understand MaaS.
본 세션은
So during this session, we will share the status of MaaS services at home and abroad, in particular related to the service mobility, and we will also share some project that has been led by such companies. By sharing lessons learned, we can find out what direction Korean MaaS should go.
먼저 오늘은
First of all, we have 3 speakers during this session, and the first speaker is joining us online today.
UITP
She is Ms. Ga-yang-oh, Head of Research Asia Pacific at UITP, which stands for International Association of Public Transport. She will touch upon prospect of MaaS in Asia.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. And thank you very much for SMG and Team Money to be inviting me today at this spectacular event. I'm very honored to be joining this from all the way from Hong Kong. So first, let me share my screen. I think with technology these days, we are able to do this remotely and still have this and to take part at this amazing event. So thank you. So today I want to share, just to spend some minutes with you all to share the prospects of MaaS in Asia. UITP has done a number of work on the topic of MaaS, and I thought we can just share with you some of our learnings, as well as some of the visions that we're seeing with MaaS. So what is MaaS? From UITP perspective, in an ideal world, MaaS is an integration of different transport services in one digital mobility. It allows commuters to have access a variety of mobility options to include mass public transport, shared and active mobility services. It is meant to be a tailor-made service that suggests the most suitable solutions based on the user travel needs. MaaS should be available anytime, offering the integrated and most importantly, offering integrated planning, booking, and payment system. It is also very important to know why we need MaaS, or why we're thinking MaaS could be the future, is because it's meant to provide the easy mobility and enable life without owning a car. If you think about how we travel today, it's really how MaaS, one of the critical success for MaaS is that it derives from the need for seamless payments and travels. Think about how we want to take different modes in our journey. We would have to use all these different payment systems. And the pictures on the right are existing payment systems still exist today. But with the MaaS model, it is meant to have, it's supposed to enable us commuters to have able to book these different services and have the options of taking them in just one simple application. So why is MaaS interesting? When you look at the global trends, there are mega trends that helps to boost the development of MaaS, such as the increasing need for seamless travels, for cashless payments, and the growing population in mobile usage and applications, as well as shared economy and shared mobility. The concept is no longer foreign to us, and the growth of real-time data usage and application. Most important of all, our commuters are getting more demanding. They want more choices. They want less waiting time in commuting. So with public transport as the backbone, MaaS is meant to be benefiting all stakeholders. For example, from the user perspective, it's meant to be seamless, convenient, transparent, and easy mobility. For cities, it's meant to help to shape travel behavior toward a more sustainable mode. Public transport operators, it's meant to help them with more commuters on board, better customer loyalty, and ultimately result in higher ridership. For private organization, this will become new market developments for them. More customers, increase in profits, and shareholder value. So who takes which role within the ecosystem? There are a number of roles, and there's multiple contracts and a lot of different ways. And most important of all, we need to understand which model will be best suited for a city. Frankly, there is really no one size fits all, but there are different models that we're seeing today, and we can explain a little bit what we think in terms of the positivity and the downside of each model. So for example, on the left is the Model 1, which is what we call the commercial integrator. This is predominantly driven by private organizations. There tends to be having multiple bilateral agreement with MaaS providers and transport operators. There will be competitions and likely be no specific regulations. This model it tends to be providing more customer-oriented and innovative solutions. However, there are some downfall to this model. It might be less socially inclusive. The data may not be shared with relevant and important stakeholders, such as the public authorities, for better public transport system planning and services, as well as there potentially be a risk in bias in presentation of the different transport options because it is driven by the private sector. In the MaaS Model 2, this is what we call the open backend platform. This will be likely to be set up by a public entity, such as a public authority. The platform will serve as a public infrastructure with different actors to build on this MaaS solution. It has the potential to be a customer-oriented, innovative, and provide a selection of neutral options of mobility services. And it allows to integrate the local mobility providers, and it leaves room for competition. One of the downfall is that the investment for this open back-end platform potentially be high, and it needs to be sustainable. The MaaS Model 3, we call it the public transport would be the integrator, or the public transport as the integrator. This often we see is, it happens when it's the public transport operator, which is likely to be providing multimodal services already, and they have a large customer database, and which acts as predominantly the backbone of the sustainable urban mobility. It makes sense for them to lead the integration of other mobility services. This model likely to perceive the highest in terms of sustainability for sustainability and mobility option, financially potentially be more sustainable and socially inclusive. However, this model may perceive to be less customer oriented and less innovative because public transport, it needs to be driven by the public transport operator who is running the major urban mobility system. We are seeing a starting trend or a concept of what we call the Model 4, the mesh network. Currently, we're seeing predominantly just in startup and really on a small scale trial. We haven't yet seen it in a large scale because this is using the technology blockchain. The idea is to use decentralized ledger technology so it prevents having one single entity to be in the middle, to be the aggregator. But while still allowing the creation of the coordinated mobility ecosystem. This is still yet to see in the future. So what conditions do Asian cities need for MaaS? It needs to have reliable public transport services to serve as the backbone of the network. The city needs to have a diversity of transportation options from mass public transport to shared mobility. It needs to have a stable IT infrastructure and sufficient mobile coverage for this integrated platform to be useful. Policymakers and private organizations need to align their objective and collaborate to ensure MaaS system is sustainable. The cost of public and shared mobility options has to be cheaper than the private vehicles. And data sharing and governance of transport services are the foundation of a sustainable MaaS platform. So I would choose a couple of key things to highlight in terms of MaaS model, what it needs to do. It has to be a user-centric experience. Without that, MaaS cannot be possible because we're asking people to change the behavior of how they're seeing their commuting experience. So for example, UBGO in Gothenburg was one of the examples we chose that we looked at where we thought it was quite successful by just testing merely 70 households. And they had to, and amongst them, 20 cars would be put away in storage. In 6 months, they had more than 12,000 booking on the MaaS platform. Convenience was seen as the key benefit. And UBGO worked because it had a flexible mobile subscription, like a flexible subscription like mobile phones. The service combined public transport, car sharing, rental car services, taxi, and bicycle system, all in one smartphone app. And it's most important, all the payment is in one invoice and 24/7 support. And in order to drive for more the choices of sustainable transport options, bonus points were given for those choices. So MaaS is about collaboration and partnership. There has to be a value for every partner to be in this ecosystem. And in terms of the reciprocity and the data deal, and providers want to keep the relationship, and each stakeholder should aim to be able to respect that. So one of the examples that we're seeing in terms of a successful collaboration is this trial of the Tokyo suburban MaaS, where it was piloted just earlier on this year in a residential area just outside of Tokyo. They wanted to understand whether MaaS could go beyond the two main providers. And each providers or each partners had a clear objectives and clear roles, how they play in the MaaS system. And as you can see in this MaaS system, it allows to bring a number of key players to ensure to drive not only just a stronger mobility system, but as well as a healthy economic lifestyle. So we did question, what is the development of MaaS after COVID? Many cities have gone through lockdowns. We're all questioning whether our mobility pattern will be the same as before. We're wondering whether people will return to workplace 5 days a week. This is all up in debate right now. But I think it's very clear that after the pandemic, we're seeing that there is a need for a city to be more agile and resilient urban mobility system. As we can see that around the world, when we have lockdowns, or we're seeing that MaaS public transport and the conflicts of MaaS public transport and social distancing regulation was bringing a city into trouble. Investment in technology. As similar example like today, this can only happen with the investments of cyberspace and remote assistance. And I think as human, we're very resilient in turning the opportunity how we can continue to live and to sustain our lifestyles and our productivity through this technology. Traceable payment system. This is becoming increasingly important to have the ability to predict and manage mobility pattern and convenience and hygiene transaction. And this is now inclusive in the public health, in terms of the public health concerns. So what is the future of MaaS? MaaS is, we may not see an immediate reverse of growth in private vehicle ownership, but cities have proven that MaaS could slow down the use of private vehicle, and we can reduce the growth rate. There is no one size fit all in terms of the MaaS solution because each city is different. There are various MaaS models and objectives for the MaaS operations. For example, as we saw, there are citywide MaaS or suburban MaaS. MaaS will create more public-private partnerships. Therefore, stakeholders need to find this equilibrium with the main aim to solve the current mobility issues that the city are facing today. And MaaS encourages growth and mobility options in a city. And lastly, I would like to leave you all with a quote that I thought was very useful from the CEO of the EXPO. To recognize that public transport will always be the most effective way of moving people. But in order to stay relevant, we need to ensure the public transport is fully integrated with the city and people's lifestyle. So thank you.
네, 가양호님 발표 감사드립니다.
Thank you very much.
네, 다음
And the next speaker is Mr. Jo Dong-wook. He is working for T-Money Mobility Business Department. And Mr. Jo will touch upon introduction of T-Money 2.0 and lesson learned. Please welcome him with a big hand.
Good afternoon. My name is Jo Dong-wook. I am the division leader and vice president of mobility division of T-Money. After lunch, I see many people attend this session, and more people are joining us online. The people in charge of mobility in Korea and other countries are watching this session. T-Money started to consider MaaS concept 6 years ago, and we are also hosting MaaS Forum and have continued the study and research into MaaS system. And last year, we applied the MaaS system to the daily life already. So today, I'm here to share our experiences about the MaaS system and discuss with you about how we go forward with MaaS system. The concept of MaaS that we are thinking about is like this. MaaS goes hand in hand with the on-demand mobility. When you hail a taxi, you use the smartphone app to call a taxi and you go to the destination. We are using KTX and the intra-regional bus by using our cell phone. Several years ago, when we applied the mobile ticketing to the use of buses, we applied the QR code system. Many people wonder about the feasibility of the system, but after the application of the technology now, many people are naturally using the QR code system to book the bus usage. This is a very hot issue, and many people are concerned about the regulation. And this MaaS system is also related to the shared mobility. And many things are changing but with the introduction of apps on our cell phones. And we are thinking about how to integrate all these systems that are available now. And what we are thinking is very similar to what Mr. Ho said. To increase the convenience of using transportation system, we are developing this system with the concept of MaaS. We have completed the research into the MaaS system. The year before last year, we introduced the GPS related the guiding service, and also we introduced last October the mobile booking system for the using of electric scooters, and I will explain this later. The transit discount system is available on our T-Money. And have you ever used the shared bike called Darungi? And when you use a Darungi and then you move on to another mass transportation system, you got a discount for using the mass transportation system. So people use Darungi or the bus, and the users can get a discounted fare. So many people are using this shared bike and the mass transportation system that are available on our T-Money system. This July, we are going to launch the T-Money 2.0, the second version of T-Money. And I think this new T-Money system incorporates the MaaS concepts. As I said earlier, the T-Money Go 2.0 is as follows. It has these three basic concepts: the availability of all services in one-stop application. And so it makes available for using all types of mass transportation. I believe you have knowledge of MaaS. MaaS has begun in the European cities, and the MaaS system is available in the cities in Europe. But we are thinking about applying the scope of the MaaS system, not just Seoul, but the other provinces in Korea. So we are to provide the integrated booking system for the entire nation by combining all the intra-regional buses and other mass transportation that connect provinces. In the initial stage, we have discussed with the local governments on how to design MaaS system. But Seoul City has already introduced the MaaS concept in 2017. So before the definition of MaaS, as we know now, was introduced, Seoul City has already introduced the MaaS system on their own. So they run the one-stop mobile platform that enable the use of mass transportation for Seoul citizens. But now we are thinking about how to expand the scope of this system. So I'll talk a little bit about the one app. So many users of mass transportations have to download a lot of mobility apps on their cell phones. There are a lot of apps like the guiding of the path, the recommending the optimal routes, or the bus or subway information apps. So a particular large-size app already accommodates many of these functions, but we are thinking about what kind of platforms and what kind of functions to be integrated in our one app. With just one app, the users should be able to use all types of mass transportation methods. For example, bus, bikes, taxis, and shared bikes and shared scooters, so that users can conveniently and easily use these mass transportation methods. So this is our goal. As I said earlier, when you set a destination, app recommends different paths with different modes of transportation. So users can make a choice of the recommended routes. And this is what the T-Money Go 2.0 offers. This, like I said, the air flights or the KTX, the high-speed trains or intra-provision buses or the city buses. So all these are available in one app service. When we have launched the Express Bus Book app in 2017, so actually many people are using our app, in particular the civil servants who are based in the Sejong city, which is far away from Seoul, are using our app. There are a lot of requests from users, but there is another app that is operated by mobile service providers. So there is a conflict of interest between us and the transportation operators. So we have considered that demand and their claim, and we have coordinated the interest among different stakeholders, and we are to launch our new service that accommodate all the demands for using one app to book all types of mass transportation. And with this project, we were able to have great knowledge about different types of mass transportation. There are different types of bus systems, the expressways bus and the inter-regional bus at the different rates. So we have studied different types of modes and rates of the mass transportation services and made it available in our new service. So when you set a destination, regardless of the place, our app offers you the optimal path and means of mobility. And you can select the seat of the transportation, and it can be one-way or it can be by-way, round ticket. And all these recommendations can be made by our app, even considering your other information like where to stay or where to depart from. So everything is considered to recommend the optimal course. This is a type of public goods, and citizens are using this. The basic goal is to benefit the citizens. So as we provide our services, and we are considering how to benefit the citizens. And so we provide some coupons for using our services, and it is necessary for us to provide seamless mobility service to our users. So we are developing many incentives and many benefits, such as T-Money coupon. And this coupon is provided at the T-Money version 1 and also T-Money version 2. And we have promoted this the coupon to further democratize the use of our service. So when you use the T-Money, you can also benefit from these coupons. And I recommend you to use our T-Money to get this benefit.
이제 아마 여러 가지 이렇게 찍으면 저희가 선물도 많이 드리고 있고.
And there are a lot of gifts that we offer to our users, even the coupon for Starbucks coffee. So please use our service.
운영을 깔고 런칭을 해서 실제로 배운 게 뭐냐면.
So we have introduced the T-Money version 1, and we have learned a lot of lessons. We developed a platform, and we provided the service that delivers some convenience of mobility to our users, but that's not all. Actually, there are some people, some stakeholders that have some dismerit. For example, one of the service provider can not benefit from this service. The operators may not get benefit from this platform, but basically we try to respect the transportation operators, and we believe that they also should be able to benefit from our platform. So that's one lesson that we have learned, that we have to consider all the stakeholders' benefits. So there are also other elements like the shops and the accommodations and the foods. But basically, we are planning to provide the seamless mobility to users. We are not to make our service complicated by including the food providers or the hotel information. We just simplify our app to focus on the mobility. And there are another stakeholders like local governments. And collaboration among the stakeholders is very important.
3-4년 동안 포럼을 통해서 얻었었던 내용.
For the past 3 to 4 years, and also for where we have hosted forums, and we have launched our T-Money for 2 years. So in so doing, we have found so many problems, and we have learned a lot of lessons. And I recommend you to use the MaaS service on our platform and enjoy the benefit of the MaaS system that we provide. We believe that the MaaS system can be completed by our system T-Money Go 2.0, which will be launched into the market soon. If you use MaaS effectively, then you will benefit from a better world, better technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cho Dong-wook. And this is the last presentation of this session. It will be delivered by a fellow researcher Lee Seok-ju at Korea Transportation Institute. His presentation is about the MaaS demonstration from Daegu City at the forefront. Please welcome him with a big hand. Hello everyone, I am Lee Seok-ju at the Korea Transport Institute. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to stand at this meaningful occasion. Two previous speakers introduced MaaS, and today I'd like to share some examples of the MaaS demonstration. And they share some examples that have happened in Seoul City and many other areas. But again, I will focus on the demonstration that have been carried out in Daegu metropolitan city. This is the overview of our project. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport started Smart City Innovative Growth Engine project from 2018. And as a part of that, they have R&D task to tackle the urban traffic issues in Daegu. And they want to increase the share of mass transport up to 10% or higher in Daegu Daegu. And as an alternative, we suggested MaaS, where the existing the mass transport and new means of mobility can work together. Back then, we have some serious issues at the mass transport. Largely, there are 6. Of course, this is the the issues that we face at the mass transportation perspective. But when it comes to the same mass transport, situations depends on the cities. All cities has different situation and difficulties. First of all, in Daegu, the congestion occurs during the rush hour only. During the daytime, it's pretty okay. And we are, even though we are metropolitan city, but still, if you let it go a little further from the city center, it's more like small and community. So it's the setting and the condition is different from Seoul. And the mass transport is having very long and complicated route. And during the night, we cannot operate mass transport 24/7. The serious issue is that whether it's a subway or bus, they do not have any other alternative. These days, we are having electric scooters and some sharing cars, but that's largely available in large cities. But Daegu or Daejeon, which is a mid-sized cities, do not offer diverse types of mobility. Very recently, we introduced the electric scooters and electric bicycles only. And there are many areas with weak traffic infrastructures. Actually, I wonder to see the mass transport route, because the bus route is very limited and the number of buses is also very small than we expect. So if you have any chance to talk with Daegu citizens, they say they prefer to have their own vehicle because the time they should consume to move by transport and by their vehicle are too different. So these 6 are the major transport issue about the mass transport. This is a little, I just to give you a little more deep down of each different issues of transport. There are different types of buses depending on the operation time. So almost all buses stops after 11 p.m. and they start their operation around 5 in the morning. So during the time, they have to use taxi or their own vehicle. As we started working on this project, first idea that we had was to introduce new means of mobility. Because there was no alternative to certain time slot, we have to offer some new medium of mobility, let alone the introduction of the MaaS. So we started with electric scooter, and it has extended to the EV or shared vehicles or electric bicycles as well. So we try to integrate everything onto one single applications to control and manage everything efficiently. That was our intent behind it. The first step might be to vitalize the mass transport. So we try our best to expand and vitalize mass transport a little further. We conducted some surveys to see what is the most inconveniences coming from mass transport. People are saying it takes too much time and the route is too complicated and the operation time is too limited. So anyhow, it looks very clear that people need to have new means of mobility like a DRT or some others. So we have reviewed all of them and select a couple of them which looks optimal to the city.
교통환경 트렌드를
We
맞춰서
try, befitting the usage trend, we prepare to reflect them onto the new medium.
저희가 실제로 진행된 과제 내용에 대해서 좀
This is the content of our actual project.
문제에 대해서 좀
After understand the issues and problems of traffic in Daegu, we categorize all the issues depending on the purpose, which includes commuting, leisure, the attending schools, and the areas with the weak transport infrastructure. Based on that, we developed the scenarios.
어떻게 반응하는지를 추적을 했습니다.
And with the scenario, we expect and track how people respond to that. The biggest challenge we faced from the very beginning was that we have to encourage people to change their behavior. In particular, their pattern of a trip. Once that is settled down, it's very difficult, almost impossible to change that.
가장 먼저 시작했던 것은
So we started working on from
젊은 사람들 대상으로 해서 먼저
students who are a little more flexible.
저희 쪽에서 구성한 시스템에 대해서는
This is the system that we designed. And during the second session, I heard a lot of meaningful the information have exchanged, so I will be very brief. We connect all the transportation information first. So all the information from the infrastructure have connected, and then we link to all the means of mobility. Once they just get on the trip to the one single final destination, everything should be linked. And also over the platform, regardless of the means of mobility, we try to converge and integrate every services in one single platform.
동일한 목적을 가지고서 유사한 방식으로 구현을 하였습니다. 뭐 정산 및 결제가 저희 쪽의 앱에서도 저희 쪽에
Transaction and settlement happened also at the same platform. And by doing so, we can collect more data. And that data can be used to improve the mobility application, mobility app function. And over the app, people can use different functions.
간단하게 저희가 앱 하는
It simplifies our application.
이게 한번 앱이 실행되면
Once you activate it,
중간이 아니라서 먼저 설명을 먼저 드리고서 간단히
let me just give you the explanation first. This is one single screen. You can log in.
앱에 등록되어 있는 선불 카드를 통해서 선불 카드
Then you can have your prepaid card on the app. Then you can check your balance. And you can type in your starting point and destination. Then the app shows all different types of means of mobility, how to arrive at that destination. And it shows all different alternatives, then the users select the one that works best for them. And depending on the selection made by the user, they will guide them.
마지막에
And at the end of that, and the users also can make a reservation and return the electric scooter, and they can pay on the same platform as well.
그다음에 결제하는 그런 시퀀스의 동영상을 보여드리도록
So that was the sequence of this application. It was as of June of last year, so we have made a little improvements, but largely it remains the same.
로그인하고 나면은
Once you logged in,
앱에 통합되어 있는 선불 카드에 있는
it shows the balance that you have on the prepaid card. And the app helps you to search and trace the route from the East Daegu station. That's your starting point, and the destination is
대구 디지털 산업단지
Daegu Digital Industrial Complex. You typed in that.
수단을 보게 되면 제일 위에
And the medium means, it shows all different means that you can use. Yellow means electric scooter. bus electric scooter or subway electric scooter, or you can use a bus and subway and many others. It shows all different alternatives and also showing expected time to travel. And if you select a bus and scooter, then it shows where you get the bus, and it shows you can make a transaction when you get on the bus. And then when you take off, you can also tag at the terminal in the bus. And you can find the location where you lease the electric scooter around the final destination. And based on the QR code, you can lease that scooter. And you can also return it based on that. Then it asks you to pay the certain amount, then you can make a transaction with your prepaid card. Since the last June, many other functions have added. Maybe I think Seoul City is having a similar project. But there is one little changes. Instead of we are controlling all the means, we are working together with the operator. By doing so, we try to open the opportunities for more diverse means of mobility can join and come in. So let me just give you the result of the demonstration project. And during the third year, which is last year, we tried to demonstrate and verify the functions. Whenever we have new functions, we have a verification. We also prepare that we also try to make it available very soon. And whenever we demonstrate the services, that service have been tested for the 30 or so general citizens. We have done it every month for 2 scenarios. Last year, we had the first service demonstration around the Keimyung University, and we plan to have another service verification inside the Daegu. Maybe next year we expand the territories and the physical areas to have the service demonstration. This is the result. When we had the demonstration last year that have been targeted for students, they largely use the mass transport. They have a lot of complaint about the mass transport. After having this the demonstration, what they find it happy and pleasant is that they are very happy with the new means of mobility. As I mentioned earlier, this is one part of Ministry of Land and Infrastructure's project, and it is one of the R&D projects. And the ministry has some comprehensive project to put everything together. And as I mentioned earlier, we are building an open platform. So diverse systems and existing transportation systems will be added into one single platform. New means of mobility are introduced to the Daegu city, including local DRT, that can be also linked to this one single platform. The outcomes of this project will be expanded and advanced later further after this project period finished. And we also have many different areas to have demonstration because we have some Helios area, we have some area with specific characteristics. So that's another step that we have to make. And we also ready to make it public of all the content. That's it. Thank you.
네, 이석주 부연구원님
Thank you very
감사합니다.
much, Ms. Lee. So we have listened to the three presentations.
다시 한번 무대 위로 모시고
Now I'd like to ask the three presenters to come up to the stage for panel discussion.
네, 지금부터 토론을
From now, we will have discussions.
마스에 대해서
The three presenters have an in-depth
내용으로 해서 발표를
discussions on MaaS as a demonstration project. What we should know is,
가양호님께서 발표하신 내용에서도
as Ms. Ho said, the basic elements of MaaS is planning, booking, payment, and real-time data collection is necessary.
있는 기회가 되었고요. 제가 모두에 말씀드린 것처럼
As I said earlier in the beginning of the session,
다른
the
제품,
transportation services, like other goods and services, should change the paradigm centering on the users, the customers. First, I would like to give a brief question to each presenter, and the presenters answer to the questions. And if time allows, I am going to open the floor to the audience here and the audience who join us online.
먼저 첫 번째
First, my question goes to Ms. Ga-young-ho.
저는 두 가지 정도의 질문이
I have two questions for you. First,
마스를 성공적으로 수행하기 위해서
in order to implement MaaS successfully, governments and public sectors should play a role. What kind of roles should they be? And the second question is,
대중교통 체계가
Seoul has a well-developed mass transportation system, and already a lot of shared mobility services are available in Seoul. And also the many types of MaaS services have been introduced during the presentations. What do you think is the best MaaS model for Seoul City? So please.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. I think it's a great question, especially the first one about the roles of different stakeholders. As I mentioned in my presentation, and also my peers today have shown that MaaS does require a collaboration. For the public and private, for sure, the government plays a role in terms of the regulations. As you can see that a sustainable MaaS system, if it's purely driven by a private sector, we will get potentially commercial viability as the forefront of the objective. However, we often know that may impair some of our public transport offerings. So for a government, it is important to build trust amongst all the partners, because all partners do have diverging interests. But we need to make sure they align and ultimately achieve the sustainable urban mobility goal that we need. And then to build support. So in some of the case study I presented, for example, the Gothenburg one, where it is the government help to build some incentive into promoting the more sustainable modes, even though in making sure the shared and the private sector are joining in this ecosystem. But as all behavior tends to be, the more you incentivize one type, a particular behavior, that is likely you're able to shape the outcome. And then, of course, for the government, in terms of the public policy goals, we need to make sure they are aligning and as well as have a regulatory framework to preserve the non-profitable and as well as the profitable mobility options. But the private sector definitely are an essential player in this, because we often know that the private sector are the most agile, they have the most innovative solutions, and they are, frankly, sometimes more customer orientated because they can react quickly. So I think everyone has a role, and it's just to make sure that there is that equilibrium there. And then secondly, you mentioned about the MaaS models in Seoul, and there is, and it's good, great to hear about some of the models today with my peers here. I think based on the concepts that we looked at today, it's important for Seoul to understand that, of course, Seoul has a great public transport system, and it's definitely going to be the backbone. It will be the one to be providing the sustainable mobility options. But it's also the MaaS helps to identify opportunities. So that was one reason I chose a suburban MaaS model to show today, because there are pockets within a bigger city, as the one such as Seoul, potentially is a more district-orientated MaaS model. And when it comes to in terms of who's the integrator, I think Seoul is in a very good position where there is already a very good public and private partnerships in many services already within the mobility sector. So whether the one where we looked at from T-Money or from the Daegu, I think as long as there is that very close working relationship between the private and the public parties, Model 2, which I said was the open-end platform, or transport as an integrator platform, I think either both of those two will allow a public entity such as Seoul Metropolitan Government to have a role to make sure that it's guiding all the players to ensure, again, to achieve the ultimate goal is to prevent the growth of private vehicle and to cause more social problems in the future. Thank you.
네, 답변 감사드립니다. 궁극적으로는 이 정부의 역할은 사회적인 목표인 지속 가능.
So ultimately, the goal of the government should build the transportation system, which is some social means. To do so, we have to build the reliability of the citizens and participants. And so in case of Seoul, we have built a well-organized mass transportation system. So it's possible to apply the different types of MaaS, maybe model 1 and 2 might be workable to Seoul City. So from different perspective, she recommends and gives us her perspective about the MaaS and Seoul. And I'd like to ask a question to Mr. Cho, who made the second presentation. First of all, at the private sector level, MaaS is now being operated by T-Money, and I believe that is a very good thing to see. As you mentioned on the last slide, before market has established, private sector may see the loss in the profit. That means their loss should be made up for by the public sector. The private sector is providing the master service now. Then what kind of support or subsidy and help you want to get from the public sector? Can you make some explanation about that? And the second question is that in reality, there are 4 elements of MaaS, and one of them is real-time data. And actually, public sector generate and collect a lot of traffic data, and the availability of that data should be guaranteed. Otherwise, the private sector might have a lot of difficulties and limitations to operate MaaS. From the perspective, the private sector, the public sector should share some data with the private sectors. If you have any opinion on that, please share. All right, thank you. First of all, related to the MaaS, T-Money has been operated MaaS so far, and you said the system and data, and we have prepared a lot for both of them. But all in all, how the government support the private sector, then the area to support private sector is not about supporting the companies who operate that, but supporting the user of that system, for example, citizens. So how the government can support the user of the system, I think that is critical. As I mentioned during my presentation,
비용으로 제공을 해서 테스트를 해보고 있는데
we are now having some tests at our cost, and if we provide some incentive or benefit to the user, then it is really welcomed by the citizens. So the local government
회사를 지원하는 게 아니라 대중교통을
can encourage or give some subsidies or incentive for the citizens or residents who are using the mass transport instead of giving some subsidy to the company who operate that platform. If the government support the companies only, then the participants of the citizens might be not that much high. To encourage more to use the mass transport, we have to give all the support to the end user. And for the data availability, that is really important. From 2 years ago, Seoul configured the MaaS platform, and they opened the data a lot to the private sector. But the private company actually do not recognize that part yet. So the private sector and the companies in the private sector should understand better what kind of data they can get from the government. Then they can tap on the data to make it to develop their services and product further. That's it. We have behind the schedule. We just have only 2 minutes before wrapping up. So, Dr. Lee, I just ask a very quick question. Please give us a very brief answer. So, you had a demonstration project in public sector. What was the limitations and what kind of challenges did you face to promote and vitalize the MaaS? What should be improved? Please give us, very brief and short answer.
사업을 하면서 가장
The biggest challenge is the means of mobility is very limited. That's the biggest challenge. If the means are limited, then it's meaningless to introduce MaaS. And other than that, people's acceptance and people's understanding about convenience are another thing to encourage more to use MaaS and the mass transport. Thank you very much. So far, we have some short discussion with the 3 presenters. To sum it up, in the city of the future, MaaS is not an optional but a necessity.
서비스 또는 수요라고 하는 게
Service and the demand has been changing depending on the time and space. It is different from the product and general services. To operate MaaS, we have to accumulate a lot of know-hows and experiences. From the perspective, private and public cases that we shared today will be very good lessons all of us can get for the future. And thank you very much to be here until the very last moment. And I'd like to give my biggest thanks to all the participants who are here offline and online. Last but not least, so we have 3 speakers to talk about smart living with a mobility service. Once again, thank you very much for your participation. This is the end of the session 7. Thank you very much.